White people. If crime statistics really mattered to us, we would be talking about white men every damn day. We as white people love to throw around statistics when it comes to the black community. We love to misconstrue data about poverty rates, crime rates, single-parent households. Here's the thing. If you really want to talk about problematic behavior in terms of statistics, we need to talk about white men. Most mass shootings in America? White men. School shootings? White men. Intimate partner violence, typically known as domestic violence? White men. Police brutality and systemic violence? White men. Online harassment and extremism? White men. Domestic terrorism? White men. Serial killers? White men. The demographic making up the vast majority of CEOs, judges, senators, and police chiefs who refuse to hold white men responsible? White men. And yet us white men are really talked about as being a problem. Few white people are asking, what's wrong with white men? What's wrong with the culture? Few white men are demanding that we be fixed. And why? Because we as white men humanize and individualize white violent offenders. And it's time to flip the script. To shame and blame, because I know white males are incredibly fragile when it comes to that, but instead to name what's really going on and who continues to be protected and not held accountable because of selective storytelling. I hope this helps.
One way that I knew that white patriarchal supremacy was failing here in America in particular was when I observed that college-educated white people now were suffering under the same system that was supposed to benefit them the most. See, we didn't have a student loan debt crisis until college-educated white graduates could no longer pay their student loans. We didn't have a housing crisis until college-educated white people could no longer afford a starter home or the mortgage or the interest rate for a starter home or a family home, etc. All of those things, student loan debt, being unable to find work after graduating from college despite being qualified, being unable to afford a nice home or property for your family to build wealth and to build status through inheritance and passing down and whatnot. All of those things have long been challenges for Black people and for
Hello brothers and sisters, welcome to the channel. I'm hoping that you are doing great. From wherever you're watching us from, I'm your host and presenter, Generic Stories. And this is something that I want to talk about. Oftentimes we've heard white people coming out with crazy statistics about black people. To our realization is that everything that they say about black people, it's not the truth, and we know this. But at the end of the day, they'll come up with crazy statistics, always trying to be nosy about what black people do, the inventions of black people, like they know everything. But look at the bigger part. The bigger part is this. What these folks are trying to do is always push negative stereotypes about black people without even having a clear reality, often pushing lies about black people. And what even gets crazy is that all these things that they say that black people do, they're the ones that does them, like a lot, even more than any other group. If we talk about cases that we have seen statistics being brought about black people using drugs, black people being lazy, black people being so noisy, I've heard all these things being said by a couple of white folks, right? But at the end of the day, try look at the statistics. How many Karens have you seen doing crazy things in public spaces? They are always loud, right? So this tells you that everything that they try to tell about black people, they are the ones that does them. And since they don't want to associate with that, they'll always try to deflect and make you think like you're the ones who have caused all this problem. Yet you are not the ones that have caused this product as a result. And this is something that they have pushed even towards us continental Africans, having a different perspective about black people, until some of us started dipping and getting to know the truth. That's when we knew that it is right. That it is wrong what they're saying about black people. And just watch this video. Oftentimes, this is what black folks say about black people. And just watch this video. I'll be back with my commentary and my thoughts. If you're watching us for the first time, I'll definitely ask you to subscribe to the channel, join the membership and really get so we can offer you. But until then, let's get into the video. I'll be back.
People of color, even with all of our college degrees, our certificates, our etc., etc. But it didn't all become a crisis until college-educated white people started to suffer. And if you really want to sweat thinking about this, poor white people who are especially disingenuous as being like some of the largest demographic of Trump-supporting Republicans were this one suffering the most under the same white patriarchal supremacist system. The fuck was that? Anyway, the ancestors are just agreeing with what I'm saying, basically. But poor white people being so disingenuous and being the largest subgroup of Trump-supporting Republican voters were sitting here suffering as impoverished Americans without access to college education and upward mobility and whatnot. And we're still upholding and enforcing through violence the systems of white patriarchal supremacy. As I've said previously, white patriarchal supremacy was always destined to fail because it was built on a system of privilege, and who can access that privilege was always going to be a changing definition. So white gentry could access it by virtue of birth, by virtue of their wealth and nobility status, at birth by virtue of the family that they were born into. Then it had to change to accommodate white men who were not born into the gentry, who were not born into land-owning, wealthy, powerful families. Then it had to change to accommodate white men who were not Protestant. Then it had to change to accommodate white women. Then it had to change to accommodate white people. Then it had to change to accommodate foreign people of color. It had to change to accommodate biracial and mixed race people, etc., etc. That privilege was always a changing definition by virtue of human action and human action over time. It was always going to change and thus was always going to fail. Why we have neo-Nazism and why we have fascism and Proud Boys and Oath Keepers and all this shit popping up now is because now white people are being subjected to the systemic institutionalized violence that black people and people of color were always subjected to. Right? But the white patriarchal supremacy being the self-eating snake it was really only a matter of time before the definition of who is privileged in America would change. So now that the definition of who has access to power, who has access to college education, who has access to home ownership, who has access to upward economic and financial mobility has changed and has varied to include wider groups of people. Now the self-eating snake has to adjust how it eats and how it subjugates and oppresses. And so it turns to a wider, bigger population, a bigger demographic of people to subjugate and oppress. And who else is left but other white people? Because black people have already been subjugated and oppressed. Non-black people of color have already been subjugated and oppressed. Please see Native Americans. Non-black people of color who are foreigners have already been subjugated and oppressed. So the snake looks around like, well, I've eaten all of these people. I've conquered all of these people. Who else is next? Because I'm hungry. I still have to eat. I am a snake. I am a viper. I still have to eat. I still have to consume in order to stay alive. And if now college-educated middle-class white people are all that's left, they're going to be consumed as well. Too bad, so sad. It was unheard of that a college-educated white person couldn't find a good job after graduating from university. That was the whole point of getting a college degree. It was unheard of that college-educated white people were struggling with failure to launch and moving out of familial homes in their 20s and 30s. It was unheard of that college-educated white people were working in the service industry in menial manual labor jobs despite having a college degree and being white. That was unheard of, and it didn't become a crisis until it started impacting college-educated white people. That self-eating snake is eating them up now too, and it has always been eating us, so we've always had to adapt. We've always had to rely on one another. We've always had to change. We've always had to live on the outside, be on the outside looking in. We've always had to delay certain life milestones like home ownership and marriage, etc., etc., and finally achieving a good paying job and being debt-free. We've always had to delay those things. But now college-educated white people are getting just a small, little eensy-weensy, teensy-weensy little taste sampling of what black people and people of color have always lived with in this country since this country's inception. And what do? Turn to neo-fascism. They turn to white supremacy. They turn to neo-Nazism. What did I say a while back? Poor white people who are Republican Trump supporting voters are extremely disingenuous because they're upholding a system that oppresses them too. They know that and they don't give a fuck. What they're hoping is that the self-eating snake will stop eating them and turn on the rest of us instead. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. One of the things that I truly honestly despise about white supremacy and white supremacist institutions and societies like America is that white supremacy gives all white people a sense of credibility. It gives them credence and it gives them identity, right? Whether they are white and poor, which is most white people, let's be clear, there are only like 5 or 6 well-known, wealthy white families. The rest of you are not part of the 1%, and quite frankly, are probably not even part of the 100%. If we're keeping it a buck, you have to work for a living, and then when you retire, you have to rely on Social Security and Medicare so you don't die slowly, agonizingly, and painfully. But that's another discussion, right? So whether a white person is poor, whether they're disabled, whether they're LGBTQ+, whether they have brown hair, whether they have blonde hair, they're still white, and their whiteness alone, because of centuries of oppression, gives them automatic credibility. It's an automatic like in club that they're all a part of. It's an open secret. It's a silent acknowledgement of identity amongst themselves. This is why so many of our Caucasian brothers and sisters were so adamant and so excited in the wake of Kamala Harris being the Democratic presidential nominee, and we're going to all those rallies and we had all these social media hashtags and trends and everything like that. The silent agreement among most white people was that, yeah, we're gonna smile and ooh, yeah, we're so excited, yeah, but when we get in that voting booth, we need to lock in. Okay, because what white people won't openly admit is that in their minds, answering to a white fascist dictator like Trump is just a small price to pay for answering to someone who is in power, who is still white. At the end of the day, losing their jobs, losing their health care, losing their social safety net, losing their footing, losing all their grounding, losing their families, their homes, their ability to eat, etc. Those are all just small prices to pay because most white people are quite content being oppressed if they're being oppressed by another white person. And if you don't believe me, look to 2 sources. One, the data from the exit polls breaking down who voted for Trump by race and by gender. And 2, again, the same data from the exit polls looking at the number of college-educated white women who voted for Trump. College-educated white women who, by and large, pursue liberal arts and social science degrees, where they spend 4 years minimum talking about oppressive systems and institutions. So they should really know better. Not my laundry buzzer going off while I'm talking. Anyway, that's what I truly hate about white supremacy. It's an automatic in club, and everyone else is left out of it. That's why we don't celebrate like White History Month or what have you, is because whiteness is based on what you're not, as opposed to just a celebration of culture and traditions and survival in the face of certain autocratic regimes or the face of enslavement or Jim Crow laws or whatever. It's like an automatic in club for them. It's a silent agreement when they're in rooms with one another. It doesn't matter what they say they vote for, what platforms they publicly say that they support. When they get in that anonymous private voting booth, all that shit goes out the fucking window. Systemic institutionalized white supremacy is the sole reason why a country like America is simultaneously the wealthiest country in the world and simultaneously does not have any federal widespread social safety nets for its citizens, and the few social safety nets that are available, called entitlements, that we have to wait until old age to receive, are on the chopping block every single time a Republican comes into power. That is why we have countries who are communist countries, countries that are socialist, countries that don't touch America's GDP or military power or might, and yet their citizens have better qualities of life than America does. White supremacy is the reason why that is. White people who survived the first Trump administration looked around and said, my suffering is A-okay with me if black people are suffering too, if brown people and non-black people of color and immigrants are suffering too, right? Watching all those people being deported and having their heads shaved and being publicly dehumanized and sent off to God knows where to probably never be seen again, while white people are here sitting here wondering how they're going to pay their bills now that the government agency they worked for no longer exists, and the Medicare and the Social Security they live off of will soon no longer exist. That is a-okay with them. They will walk right into the gulag. They will walk right into the human concentration camps voluntarily, willingly, might I add, happily, if it means that the person running the concentration camp is another white person. They're okay with being oppressed. History has shown us this. The fact that there are still monarchies in European countries tells us this. Data from exit polls tells us this. It is just a small price to pay. That's why we can't get through to them with messaging or with statistics or with facts or with logical arguments. Nothing will get through to them because they don't want to be gotten through to. That's just it. So leave them. Leave them to suffer. And quite frankly, I'm beginning to agree with the Democrats and their kind of hands-off approach, because this cycle happens every single time, right? Republicans come in, slash funding to every fucking thing that's not war or business related, increase taxes on everyone except billionaires, and then the economy is in shite. Everything is a fucking mess. People become tired and elect a Democrat. A Democrat comes in, fixes the problem, and then institutes public policy that would positively impact everyone, including people who are not white, and put not white people in power. The same white people who are suffering under the Republican president now turn on the Democratic leadership, vote in another Republican, and then demand that Democrats turn around and save them. Like, lather, rinse, repeat is literally what that cycle is. So I agree with the Democrats. Hands off. Give the people exactly what they want. After all, who are we to argue with the will of tens of millions of Americans? At this stage, let America get exactly what America wants. That's all we can do. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
A racist's happiness is hinged on Black people's pain. That's why they have to be where we are. They're extracting. If you hate me so much, if I'm so inferior, why are you in my comment section? Why are you drawn to me? You know, sometimes jealousy gets so big that it turns into hate. You don't hate Black people. You're jealous of Black people. And you need to come to terms with that fact. I've never seen so many racist comments under a comment section in my entire life until today. Every single video of Black students graduating, the comment sections are filled with the most incredible racism. It's funny. It's not even sad. Y'all are some losers. Imagine that I hate you so much that I come to your sports games and I shout obscenities at you from the bleachers. I know that there are a lot of young Black people that still have like a visceral reaction to racism because it's something that they've never had to really experience in this capacity. But I grew up in the 90s. Right? And after a while, you just kind of realize how ridiculous racism is to the point where you don't even react to it. It's nonsense. It's nonsense. Every time I come across a Black person who posted a video of themselves graduating, I always come into the comment section to say, delete and block these people. Delete and block these people. They are extracting from you. If you come across a video of a Black person graduating, dancing, Black people celebrating their accomplishments, please offer your words of encouragement. Drown out the hate with as much love as you can muster. I have made this a full-time job for the past couple of weeks now. Even if it's just a simple congrats, I wish you the best in your academic endeavors. We need to bring back community power. Somebody in the comment section said, racists are so mad at Black people because they have had every advantage and yet have only made it as far as minimum wage. Yeah, that about explains it. I mean, I want you to put yourself in white people's shoes just for a second. You're in a race, right? And in that race, you are the closest to the finish line while everybody else is still at the very start. And yet you still lose the race somehow. So, of course, you're going to be looking for reasons to justify your loss. And you're also going to be looking to other people to give you those reasons as well. And to conceal the fact that the race was rigged from the very beginning, they're going to tell you that it was Black people's fault. They must have been wearing special shoes. When in reality, Black people are just smart. And I'm not saying that we're any smarter than you. What I'm saying is that Black people aren't held back by the things that make you stupid. Like, if racism wasn't your defining characteristic, you might be smart. You might be able to do the same things we've been able to do in 400 years. Instead of just being smarter, you've made up reasons and you've made justifications for why Black people are innately dumber. You know, I used to be jealous of the freedom that white people have. the freedom to travel, the freedom to just be themselves and be considered an individual and not be grouped in with the entirety of their race. But I'm not anymore. Nope. A lot of white people are slaves.
This is Oliga from those videos.
Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm hoping that you are doing great from wherever you're watching us from. This is your presenter Junior Stories, and I'm hoping that you are doing great. Now, oftentimes there has always been historical justification that white folks always want to make you feel like, and they trying to make themselves feel like the bigger people, while they trying to make you as not the bigger person, like they trying to make your image look bad, while in reality they are the ones who have done all of this. And as a result, I try to ask myself, why are we always having negative stereotypes about black people? Is it that white people are really good and they don't make mistakes? No, they don't. In fact, they are the ones that even history shows that they have made a lot of mistakes. I want us to watch this video, not really watch, but I want us to listen to this presentation that I tried to check, to do research and really look into this. Why is this really happening, and why are we always having patterns of these behaviors going on and on and on and on? Right now, first I like to talk about historical justification. From period and time immemorial, white people have always tried to justify that they are better than black people. Now, from the time of colonialism and transatlantic slave trade, white supremacy needed ideological justification. In order to enslave Africans, colonize their lands, and exploit their labor and resources, white Europeans developed a belief system that positioned black people as inferior, uncivilized, or less human. These false ideas became embedded in literature, science, religion, and eventually the media. Negative stereotypes. Negative stereotypes were essentially in maintaining this system of racial dominance. They made the oppression seem not only acceptable, but necessary. The lingering effect is that the white individuals, knowingly or unknowingly, still carry a repeat distorted views as part of legacy designed to protect white privilege. That's one of the things that I came to realize when I tried to check out why is this always happening. Also, another thing that I saw, which was really marked with this, is media control and cultural power. And it's true, because look, white people, particularly white elites, have historically controlled the major media platforms: newspaper, film, television, and publishing industries. And now, as a result, they've shaped which stories get told, who gets portrayed, and how is this going to be happening? Now, the images of black people that dominated media for the most of 20th century often depicted them as criminals, uneducated, poor, or overly aggressive. These depictions are not just random or accidental. They serve as a purpose to reinforce the existing racial order by painting black people as problem rather than as people with dignity, agency, and depth. When people are exposed to these images over and over again, they start to believe them, even if they are not consciously racist. That's what happens most of the time. Also, another thing that I would like to talk about is projection and deflection. This is true. Psychologically, one reason white people may promote negative stereotypes is projection. The act of assigning their own fears, guilt, or insecurities onto others. For instance, after centuries of brutal colonization and slavery, some white societies are feared revenge or uprising, so they label black people as dangerous or violent. Even when there is no evidence, this is a way of protecting themselves from having to face historical truths or take responsibility. Remember, it is easier to blame black people for societal problems than to look inward and confront one's own complicity in racial injustice. Also, another thing that I would like to address in the same line is maintenance of power and privilege. And I think this all revolves around maintenance of power and privilege. Because when black people and all the world have true image of black people, then they are afraid that their power will go down. And as a result, everything that we think that is great about them won't go well. Why am I saying so? Now look, let's get into it. Promoting negative stereotypes also helps to justify unequal treatment and maintain existing systems of privilege. Why? If black people are falsely seen as lazy, uneducated, or criminal, it becomes easier to deny them access to good schools, jobs, neighborhoods, or political power. This is not always you know very well that this is not always done openly. Often it is embedded in policy decisions, hiring practices, or law enforcement tactics. These stereotypes are used to rationalize inequality, making it seem like black people are struggling because of their character rather than because of systemic barriers put in place by others. Also, there's this one thing that I think we need to also address in the same line: lack of genuine cross-racial understanding. This is another problem that also pushes these negative stereotypes that we are seeing today. One thing is that many predominantly white society, racial segregation, even when not legally enforced, leads to lack of meaningful interaction between white people and black communities. Many white individuals grow up without real friendships or deep exposure to black culture, and throughout their understanding of black people is filtered through media, right? Hearsay, or family biases. Without education and genuine exposure, ignorance becomes fertile ground for stereotypes. When white people lack the context or curiosity to learn the truth, they often fill in the gaps with harmful assumptions. Also, we are having fear of losing social dominance, and I think I talked about this some few minutes ago, and I'll just say it again. As the demographics and cultural landscapes shift, particularly in countries like the US, some white people express anxiety about losing their country, losing their culture, or being replaced, or the great replacement theory. I think you know about this. These fears are rooted in racial insecurity, right? In response, some try to reinforce negative images of black people to create distance and superiority. The logic is, if I can believe they are worse than me, then I don't have to question my own place or challenge the system, in a sense. Stereotyping becomes a defensive mechanism to prevent dominance in changing world. So a couple of things happen at the same time here, and this explains why we are having some white folks that are having all this negative stereotype about black people. So let me know what you think about this video. At the end of it all, I'm your host and presenter, Jake Stories. Let me know what you think about this. But until then, peace, love, and harmony. Salute.